Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And if you haven't already, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the video, as well as leave a comment if you are watching after the fact, or if you're here joining us live, keep the comments coming. We already see a number of them in the chat. The Diamondbacks come away with a narrow 8-7 win over the San Francisco Giants in the series finale. They, of course, wind up winning the series as well, 2 games out of 3. And Jack, just another day in the life of a Diamondbacks fan, stress-free, never a doubt, right?
Being a follower of a baseball team is not for the weak of heart. I think it's like that for all sports. Maybe it's the fact that it's the constant 162 game schedule that makes it just seem like a much harder drip when it comes to baseball.
Yeah, this was the Diamondbacks technically never trailed in this game. So from that standpoint, they did kind of control this one. Maybe that's a strong word. More or less throughout at least most of the game. Ketel Marte hit a home run in the first inning. Diamondbacks wind up scoring 8 runs in the first 4 innings of this game. They had an 8-2 lead entering the bottom half of the fourth. And then Eduardo Rodriguez, who was not particularly good today, he gave up a couple more runs, made it 8-4. Ryne Nelson entered the game in relief. And the Diamondbacks ultimately wind up just barely coming away with an 8-7 win. Shelby Miller got the final out in the bottom of the 9th with the bases loaded. So it was another one of those games, Jack, where the Diamondbacks pitching was not what you would want it to be. However, the difference in this one compared to yesterday was that the offense really did bring it, and they were able to come away with a win as a result of that.
Yeah, they brought it for the first 4 innings. They kind of struggled to put runs on the board after that, and then had to hold on by the skin of their teeth. I mean, I totally get how everybody felt, just watching all the comments on social media. And I'm telling you, privately, I'm the same as you guys. I feel and felt exactly the same way while all this is happening. You can ask Jesse to testify. When we're sitting together watching a game, I'm Mr. Angst. I'm Mr. Nervous. I'm like everybody's worst nightmare. But I do tamp it down when I go public. So that's maybe I'm two-faced.
Shelby Miller, I mentioned it earlier. I mean, 2 outs in the 9th inning, bases loaded. He winds up getting a fly out to finish things off. But just talking about him here real quick, Jack, 36 pitches in the bottom of the 9th. You got to give him credit for finding a way, but watching him pitch in the 9th inning, it was pretty apparent to me that he did not have his splitter. He was just throwing fastball after fastball after fastball. He threw a few splitters, but they weren't really close enough to the zone to entice a chase from any Giants hitters. And that's been kind of a trend for him lately, where we just haven't really seen the feel for the splitter. And we've talked a lot on this show about how big of a pitch that is for Shelby and how that's really set him apart, made him, a real weapon against both lefties and righties. But to his credit, his fastball also has really good life. And you saw a few fastballs that were left in honestly pretty bad spots, like right down the middle, and he was still able to get some swing and miss, some relatively soft contact on some of those pitches, because it really does have a lot of life, and I think he topped out around 97 miles an hour as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a fastball like that, when you don't have your best out pitch, and you can go back to a fastball that moves like that at that velocity, that's what makes him a pretty darn good reliever. We'll see how it works out over the next week or 10 days as far as him in this high leverage role. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of track record actually in high leverage. When he was with the Dodgers, he actually pitched very seldom in high leverage relief. When he was with the Tigers, he got some opportunities, didn't go too well. He's hanging in there for the Diamondbacks right now is the best way we can put it. But you're 100% right. With bouncing those splitters and not having, command and feel for that pitch is going to make things a lot harder for him going forward. And, even though there's a day off tomorrow, he just threw 36 pitches. So they better beat up on Colorado Friday and Saturday. They need to give him a 3-day blow.
I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, from an offensive standpoint, standouts for the Diamondbacks in this game, Ketel Marte, 2 for 4, 2 home runs. I mentioned he hit the home run in the first inning to give the Diamondbacks an instant 1-0 lead. He also hit a 2-run shot in the fourth inning that turned what was then a 6-2 lead into an 8-2 lead. Felt like a nice, comfortable 6-run cushion at the time, Jack. Of course, that nearly evaporated by the end of this game. But a big day for Ketel. Gino Suárez also had 2 hits in this game, one of those being a home run, drove in 3 runs. So Diamondbacks are, I didn't really expect this going into the season, Jack, but the Diamondbacks' offensive identity this season has very much centered around the long ball. You've started to see Ketel hit quite a few here in recent days. Corbin, of course, as of yesterday, was tied for the big league lead with 14. Gino's today was his 13th of the season. This is a Diamondbacks team that hits a lot of home runs, at least they have to this point, and they did that today in San Francisco.
Yeah, and getting 5 home runs in the last 2 series from Ketel. I was just playing around and looking at the numbers with what the percentage was of total team homers that had come from Corbin and Gino. I think it was like almost 45%. But that percentage is going to be going down if Ketel keeps hitting them like this. While we're on Ketel, I think we need to bring up, and they're already talking about it in the chat here. Thank you, Justin. Steve Gilbert tweeted out that it was a stiff hip flexor, and Ketel was removed for precautionary reasons. But they say he's fine, and they expect him to play on Friday. So I think that that pretty much answers that question. We saw on the television, on the broadcast, there was a shot of him in the dugout kind of bending over, and it looked like he was stretching. And I always think of his back in that situation.
Yeah.
And he clearly grimaced. I mean, he clearly let out a grimace. And then he realized the camera was on him, and he looked up and he gave a big smile. And so I thought, okay, something's up there. And so I'm not surprised that, he had something bothering him. But it's not an injury. He was stiff, which is fine. Let's get him out of there and move forward. Unfortunately, things didn't go so well for Jordan Lawlar. Once he replaced him, there was quite a controversial play, which you're going to get to in a moment. But at least it didn't cost him any runs. And there we go. So everything's fine in D-back land. Torey didn't screw up. He didn't make a bonehead move. He got a player who was stiff with a hip flexor out of the game, so that he didn't injure the player. And that's where we're at.
If you're joining us here in the chat, we really appreciate you being here. Be sure to drop a like on the video if you have not already. And we will get into that controversial call in the 8th inning. Maybe not so controversial. I guess we'll talk about whether it was really controversial or not. But it got Torey Lovullo ejected one way or another. We'll also dive deeper into Eduardo Rodriguez's outing on the other side of this break. But first, here are a few words from the guys over at Foul Territory.
Hey, FT fam. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit, Cam, because we're busy and we would like all of the ingredients to cook up something nice and make us look like elite chefs at home.
You know what I do? I've got kids in basketball, I've got soccer, I've got baseball. And when they get home, there's a fresh meal and they think, "Oh, Dad, he's so great." Well, no, it's not me. It's HelloFresh. It's nutritious. It's packed full of good nutrients. The kids have good energy, and they look at me like I'm the greatest dad in the world. So make sure you go grab that HelloFresh because you know what? It's doing my family all the good.
Cook up dishes like chicken Dijon and pecan crusted trout, over 100 seasonal snacks, sides, and treats as well. Feel great with meals that fit your spring schedule and make the season even more delicious. Go to HelloFresh.com/FT10FM now to get 10 free meals with a free item for life. 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan.
Update.
Yes. Update. Okay.
So, I missed Nick Picoro's tweet because we had just gone live. So Nick said that Ketel asked to come out of the game. So just to clarify that point as well.
Yeah,
So
that's an interesting detail, and something we've definitely seen with Ketel in the past, right? Monday of the final week of the season last year, people probably remember that. But yes, circling back to that odd play in the eighth inning, which was ruled obstruction on Jordan Lawlar. Although I know they took the air away from Jordan Lawlar after the fact. Now, if you go back and look at the game log, it just says Heliot Ramos singled and Christian Koss advanced to second base. But yeah, in the moment, it looked like the Diamondbacks had recorded an out. But then on replay, it was very clear that Jordan Lawlar was in the way as Christian Koss was trying to round second base. Looked like a fairly clear-cut obstruction call to me, Jack, but obviously Torey Lovullo did not agree in some form or fashion.
yeah, it's really interesting that they yanked the words obstruction from the game log because he actually was tagged out. He never made it back. Koss was
Right.
tagged out. He never made it back to second base. He appeared injured. He stayed in the game, so he couldn't have been too hurt, as you said to me off air. Perhaps he was acting or something. Maybe he thought he was a European soccer player or something like that. But Torey went nuts, and I don't really know. I'm not there in San Francisco, so I don't know what exactly he said and what he was arguing with the umpires. Initially, it looked like they were going to rule type 1 obstruction for some reason because they tried to place the runners on second and third. Then they pushed them back to first and second. I think what Torey was arguing was the umpire has discretion on a type 2 obstruction call to either impose a penalty or not. And because the play wasn't on Koss and it didn't really impact anything, I think that's what he was arguing, then there shouldn't have been any kind of violation called against Lawlar. The other thing he may just have been arguing was Lawlar was in front of out of his way enough that Koss should have been able to avoid him, but on replay, it sure didn't look that way. In any case, quite a lot of fun watching Torey run around the infield, pointing at the umpires and ejecting all 4 of the umpires. Somehow they got to stay, and he had to leave. But I'm probably seeing a John Boy breakdown on that one. I'll be looking forward to seeing it. It'll definitely make the highlights there. As it turned out, it all was for nothing. There were no runs scored in the evening, and it didn't impact the game. It just got Torey an early shower.
Yeah, Wilmer Flores wound up popping out after that hit from Heliot Ramos. So, 2 on, 2 out. But as you said, nobody scored. No harm done for the Diamondbacks with at least that moment in particular. Circling back to Eduardo Rodriguez, though, Jack, we have his line here on the screen if you're joining us on YouTube. 4 innings, 5 hits, 4 runs, 4 earned, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. I know Jeff Irving in the chat earlier asked what our level of concern is over Eduardo Rodriguez given his recent struggles, something we have talked about, it feels like, quite a bit in recent days. But Jack, this was clearly not a good day for him once again.
I believe that the most legitimate question to ask, and we're not going to get a satisfactory answer, but it's something that I probably will ask on Friday if I get a chance. Do you feel like going forward, the team would have a better chance to win a game with Ryne Nelson or Eduardo Rodriguez starting that game? I just think that that's a legitimate question to ask. But we all know that contracts matter. They just do. And Torey can't just on his own send Erod to the bullpen and start Ryne Nelson. It just doesn't work that way. That's something that would have to be an organizational decision with agreement from the top down. Now, I don't think they're there yet. I mean, what general manager is going to say at this juncture? It was different with Jordan Montgomery. That happened late in the year, August, September, after it already made 20 starts. And, at most, I guess it already, his option had already vested. But the point is that when they did that, they knew at most they would have him for 1 more year, and they knew they were going to try to trade him. But they have Eduardo Rodriguez for 2 years and 4 months or 4.5 months. So I don't know how easy it is to just say, yeah, you got to go to the bullpen. What are you going to do with them?
Yeah.
I mean, they're in a tough spot.
The contract was $80 million, and I believe he made 14 in year one, if I'm remembering correctly. And obviously, we're still pretty early in year two. So the Diamondbacks have only paid out about a quarter of the money that Eduardo Rodriguez is owed at this point. So, theoretically, should contracts really matter? You could argue maybe not. Like, you should just go with whoever you think gives you the best chance to win. But as you said, that's not generally how these things go with the Diamondbacks or any team around the league. I think the Diamondbacks actually have shown a willingness to be fairly aggressive in moving on from some players in the past. Of course, Madison Bumgarner being an example. Granted, they did keep Madison Bumgarner around for a while as well, so it did take a while, and I think the leash here is still. I don't know exactly how long it is, but I don't think we're at the end of it just yet. As long as Erod is healthy, and I think both you and I share the perspective that while he has not been good this year, and he, certainly the last two starts in particular have been very brutal. But on the whole, I think we're on the same page that he's been better than a 7.05 ERA would indicate. His strikeout numbers are still pretty good. The walk numbers, despite the 3 walks today, are still pretty decent for the season as a whole. The average exit velo against him in this game was 86.9. I don't necessarily take those numbers as gospel, but his, for the entire season, the hard hit numbers against him are within a pretty reasonable range. So it's hard to know what to do with this, Jack. I think the Diamondbacks are probably just gonna kind of keep going to him. I'm not really sure what other options they have right now.
If they want to win more games and they want to give themselves the best chance to win more games, they'll make a switch pretty soon. But I know they want to win more games, but I don't think they're going to be able to get there in their decision-making process. Even though he's not a 7 ERA pitcher, he's a 5 ERA pitcher, or 4.5 to 5. And that's still not very good, and that's not going to win you too many games. And Ryne Nelson is a better pitcher. He just is right now, and since last year, Ryne Nelson is the better pitcher. This isn't about sample size. We have eyeballs to both watch the games, and we have eyeballs to look at the numbers. And all of the eyeball tests tell us that Ryne Nelson is clearly, unequivocally the better pitcher. So,
yeah.
If you're going to put your best guys out there on the field to try to win games, you're going to have a better shot to win games. And it's tough. I mean, it's hard decisions to make. I'm not being critical of the team. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. I mean, this is a really difficult situation. It's easy for us to sit here and say, this is what they should do. But because I don't have to make that call, I am going to say what is clearly obvious. Sometimes when you're stuck in it, it's really hard to see a pathway to make what should be an obvious decision.
I think part of the equation here is that Ryne Nelson, while I agree with you that by pretty much any metric you could look at or just the eye test, that Ryne Nelson certainly, I think there's a really strong case to be made that he's better than Eduardo Rodriguez right now. But he also has a 5.13 ERA. He gave up 2 runs in 3 innings in this game. It's not like Ryne Nelson has been lights out this year. And I feel like for the Diamondbacks, if Ryne Nelson was out there shoving for the majority of the season, if he had a 3.5 ERA or something right now out of the bullpen, I think this probably becomes a more interesting decision for them. But as things stand right now, because the difference between those two pitchers is not super glaring and obvious, I think that probably helps Eduardo's case to stick around here in this role, have at least a little bit more leash.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think that you're not taking into account how Nelson is being used. His usage pattern, the days that he pitches, how much he pitches, it's all over the place. He's got no starter's routine. He's still got a 3.71 FIP and 3.48 xFIP, and came into the day with a 3.78 xERA. So that's all still a run better than Eduardo Rodriguez, where he's basically being asked to fill a role that is extremely ill-defined, messes with his routine and preparation. So I think it's apples to oranges. I don't think you can even remotely compare that. I think that
Yeah.
Ryne Nelson, I mean, he just pitched on 3 days rest. Yes, he only threw 16, 17 pitches in his last outing, but in every other outing, he's going on 4 or 5 days rest. Like, how do you prepare? A starting pitcher has a regular routine, and he just
Yeah.
goes on that routine. So give Ryne Nelson the same routine and the same opportunity to prepare and the same opportunity to know exactly what lineups and which hitters he's going to face and go through all of that pregame prep. He'll blow Erod's doors off.
I I agree with you that Ryne Nelson has been put in a tough spot this year. There's no doubting that. I think that's a great point. It's something we definitely should factor in when looking at an ERA that starts with a 5 right now. At the same time, I think if you're the Diamondbacks, you have to ask yourself the question, like, all right, if we were to do this, if we were to substitute Ryne Nelson into the rotation for Eduardo Rodriguez, how confident do we feel that Ryne Nelson would be an impact starting pitcher? Would be, not just like a 5 ERA guy, but like a 3.5 or a 4 ERA guy. And if I'm the Diamondbacks right now, I feel better about Ryne Nelson than Erod. Like, as we've been saying before, I think the case there is pretty strong. But do I feel confident that Ryne Nelson is truly a 3.5, 4 ERA, true talent type guy as a starting pitcher? I don't know if we've seen enough from him as a starter in this league to necessarily buy into that, at least from my perspective. Ryne Nelson has a career 4.61 ERA, and he was outstanding in the second half last year. But, I still think we're in the earlier stages of his career where he's prone to other teams kind of figuring him out. It's not like he has this arsenal of plus pitches. It's still a very four-seam fastball heavy situation for him. Whereas Eduardo Rodriguez, you could talk yourself into like, all right, this is a guy who has an array of pitches and a much longer track record of success in this league. So I don't know, Jack. I think
those are good counterpoints too. This is what we do, guys.
We just go back and forth, and off the air we never stop. This conversation would just go on for like 2 hours, but we'll spare all of you that today. Moving on to this series as a whole, Jack. Diamondbacks take 2 out of 3. You'll certainly take that on the road against the San Francisco Giants. Another situation, much like the Dodgers series, where if you'd asked anyone if they'd be happy with 2 out of 3 in this series, I think they would say yes before the series began. Looking at some standouts from this 3-game set in San Francisco, Merrill Kelly certainly stole the show on Monday. He and Corbin Carroll dual-handedly won them that game pretty much. And then you also see Carroll's stats for the series here, 5 for 12 with 3 home runs and 2 walks. Lourdes Gurriel also had a nice series, 6 for 12. He had 2 hits in all 3 games, 3 doubles. Diamondbacks made an interesting decision today to move him up into the 3 spot in the lineup. Gino Suárez went 3 for 11 with the home run that he hit today. And then, of course, Jack, we also have the bullpen totals for the series. Diamondbacks relievers went 11 innings and allowed 9 runs. That's a 7.36 ERA, which unfortunately, dating back to when AJ Puck and Justin Martinez were last healthy, 9 runs in 11 innings has been pretty normal for this group.
Yeah, pretty close. Is it over 7 at this time? I haven't gone back and recalculated that selective begin and end point, but yeah, it's pretty rough. Corbin Carroll, man, what a stud. What an unbelievable stud. I had an opportunity to talk about him with our good friends Dan Bickley and Vince Marotta the other day too. And they were asking me about Corbin, and I just kind of brought up the throwing arm turnaround. And, it just applies to everything in his game. Like, what a remarkable talent he is to take a weakness and turn it into a strength. Whether it was he couldn't hit a pitch at the top of the zone last year and popped him up and swung and missed. And then this year he made a minor tweak and, figured out how to cover that part of the strike zone. His arm was considered very weak, and now it's a strength, and he's throwing 95-mile-an-hour strikes, into the home plate. I saw him throw in one to second base. Guy got a double, and there was a throw that, like, wow, that was closer than I nearly expected it to be. So he's just an amazing person, an amazing athlete, but also just the mental discipline to take something that's a weakness, figure it out, attack it, and turn it into a strength. It's phenomenal to watch. So anyway, that's my little Corbin Carroll spiel.
It is. We talk a lot in baseball about the work ethics of these guys, and I think sometimes it can get a little old hearing that because, frankly, in order to get to this level, everyone has to have an absurd work ethic, right? I mean, you just don't make it to Major League Baseball without that. But to your point, Corbin feels like he's in a bit of a different category there, where not only does he have the unbelievable work ethic that a lot of these athletes do, but it feels like his off seasons have been very productive. And you could argue that his offseason going into last year was a bit counterproductive, right? He made some adjustments that wound up actually setting him back, and he really struggled in the first half of 2024 as a result. But eventually he figured that one out too. And then this past offseason, he made some more adjustments to really try to figure out his swing and kind of what happened, what went wrong for him the year prior. And in addition to that, he was like, oh yeah, I'm also going to somehow, as you said, turn, what was probably like a 35 on the 20 to 80 scale, 40 maybe, into right now, he very well might have an above average arm. And it's become something that I kind of look forward to in watching Diamondbacks games. Like anytime there's a ball hit to right field, it's like, oh, Corbin Carroll's going to come up throwing, and this is going to be interesting. Whereas in the past couple years, for as good as Corbin has been, you're a D-backs fan, you might want to look away during some of those moments where it just felt like opposing teams were running off him anytime they had an opportunity. For sure.
Just one other comment I want to make. When we have the D-backs record up on the screen there, 23 and 21. Hat tip to our friend Steve Gilbert over at MLB.com. I actually glanced over at his page real quick to see if there was an update for Ketel earlier. And he mentioned, we all know that the D-backs went through this 16 games in 16 days stretch. They went 8-8 in that stretch. And what he reminded us was every team that they played, if the season ended tomorrow, is a playoff team.
Yeah.
So you got Mets, Phillies, Dodgers, Giants. I mean, all of these games that they've played have been against teams that are in a playoff position, and they went 8-8. So the other thing, I tweeted this out maybe last night or early this morning, I can't remember. And I went and looked up on Baseball Reference StatHead. Teams at that point with a .512 win percentage or worse in the wild card era since 1995. And there have been 71 teams that were either .512 or worse, including under 500. 71 teams that made the postseason. 48 of those teams were under 500 and made the postseason. 4 of those teams won the World Series. Now, that's not to say that the Diamondbacks don't have issues with their bullpen. There aren't concerns. We don't know yet exactly what they are and how they're going to fix these things. But I can guarantee you that the fans of those teams that were looking at a 500 team at best or a team under 500 through 43, 44 games didn't think that they were looking at a playoff team either. They thought they were looking at a 500 team. So I'm just trying to emphasize to everybody, and I feel the same angst that everybody else does. I get nervous, much more so than Jesse, who's very cool, calm, and collected all the time. But I use this data and I use this information to help bring me in off the ledge. And so when I send that out to you guys, I'm trying to do the same for you. We don't know yet what they are and where they're going to end up. It's just too early to tell. It's not over. It's far from over. Not saying that because they won a game today. I said this yesterday.
This also, Jack, in addition to concluding that just brutal stretch of 16 games in 16 days, this also concludes the brutal stretch of 25 games that you had identified a while back. It started with the Cubs series in Chicago back on April 18th. It's about a month-long stretch where the Diamondbacks were just playing good team after good team. And that ended today, and the Diamondbacks went 11-14. And that is not great. But I also remember you saying you'd take 13-12 if you could get it. Diamondbacks weren't able to do that, but at 11-14, it at the very least was not a disaster for them. And given the state of their bullpen, you could, maybe there was a world where this was really, really rough for the Diamondbacks. They managed to stay afloat.
They fight. Torey Lovullo's teams fight. For the whole fire Torey Lovullo crowd, the day that the team stops fighting, stops playing hard, stops running everything out, stops practicing hard, the day that we can see that they've tuned him out and that they're not hustling and playing hard, that's the day I agree it's time to make a change. And so we'll see how it goes from here. They still need better relievers. They need to figure out this bullpen. They're not going to be able to get on any kind of a real winning streak without a better bullpen. They have the starting pitching to get on a winning streak, Erod notwithstanding lately. But it's very possible for this team to go 2 turns through the rotation and get good enough pitching to win 10 games, but they don't have anywhere near the bullpen to do that, and really good to great teams. They all go on a 6, 7, 8, 10 game winning streak or 12 out of 13. I mean, that it is important to have at least one stretch in your season where you do that. So we're waiting.
The Diamondbacks get a bit of a break now. They finally have an off day. They have Thursday off, and then they also get a break in terms of level of competition as they have a 3-game series against the Colorado Rockies this weekend at home. Rockies, of course, just fired Bud Black. It's big news coming out of that team recently. Of course, their season has not gone particularly well, to say the least. But then the Diamondbacks are kind of right back at it. They've got 3 games in Los Angeles against the Dodgers. And then they follow that with 3 games on the road against the Cardinals, a team that they have historically not played very well on the road, and a team that also just doesn't really lose anymore. Apparently, the Cardinals have been on a really impressive run lately. Then after that, things start to ease up a little more. Pirates and Nationals at home, not quite as bad for a little while after that. So, it's been really rough for the Diamondbacks lately, Jack, in terms of level of competition. They've managed to kind of hang in there. They're 23-21. Certainly could be in a better spot at this point in the year, but could be in much worse position as well. They were actually in a worse position last season and still wound up finishing the year with 89 wins. So, should be interesting, Jack, to see how the Diamondbacks respond to a much lesser level of competition this weekend against the Rockies.
Yeah. Somebody here wrote Trap Series. Who wrote that? I don't want to. Where'd you go there? Anyway, I'm sorry. I can't find your name real quick on the screen, but somebody, this is a trap series. I hope not. I think that, they won 2 out of 3. Everyone's going to be like, how do you not sweep the Rockies? But, we'll see how that goes. The one thing I wanted to say was a month ago, I didn't have the Cardinals as a difficult series.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, look at them. So, that's the other thing. You just never know. By the way, when I talked about, just last year, there was, when I talked about that list of teams that didn't make it, I think Detroit, Houston, and San Diego were on that list of teams that were 22-21 or worse and still made the postseason. Everyone says, well, this year the strength of competition is so much higher. But you pointed out the other day, like last year, the narrative at this point was, yes, the wild card, maybe we're going to have a 500 team make the wild card. And the D-backs were one of 3 teams that won 89 games, and the Padres won 93. And D-backs were on the outside looking in. There are a couple other teams around 83, 84. So again, we just don't know. Some of these teams that have gotten off to really hot starts, they're going to come back to the pack a little bit too. I don't think the Padres are going to continue to play 650 baseball or whatever it is. So, just give it time, guys.
Well, the Diamondbacks, as we've said, they are taking on the Rockies for a 3-game series this weekend. We will be back on early Friday morning with a show previewing that series with good friend of the show, Patrick Lyons. We'll talk about some of the narratives surrounding the Rockies this year, as of course things have not gone particularly well out there. But to all of you joining us here in the chat, we really appreciate it. As always, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a like on the video and drop a comment if you have not already. We love interacting with all of you. Over on social media, you can find us. I am at Jesse N. Friedman on X. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. And of course, all roads lead to at Snakes Territory over on X. Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. You can find his work along with the work of his entire team over there at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. Jack, anything else before we say goodbye on this Wednesday evening?
I'm looking forward to an off day of no baseball to cover tomorrow. We'll still be writing some articles and publishing some articles, but I'll get those done early in the morning and then just kind of have a relaxing day. And I'll be back out at the ballpark on Friday to continue reporting. And I'll look forward to seeing and hearing your preview with Patrick on the Rocky series.
That is the next show coming out Friday morning. Once again, we really appreciate all of you being with us, and we'll be back again on Friday with another episode of Snakes Territory.